So it was 2021, and for the first time in all of human history, a machine hunted down and killed a human being, entirely on its own. And no, this isn't some scene out of a sci-fi blockbuster. This is a cold, hard, documented fact from a United Nations report. A combat drone was given a target profile, it was unleashed, and it made the final decision to kill. No human operator, no one gave the final command.
That single event marks a turning point, a real line in the sand for the history of warfare. We are now face to face with a technology that forces all of us to ask a really terrifying question. What happens when we outsource the act of killing to a machine?
Okay, so to really get a grip on just how serious this is, we've got to be super clear about what we're even talking about. This is the new frontier of conflict. We're talking about the rise of, well, what people are bluntly calling killer robots.
Now, the official term, the fancy one, is Lethal Autonomous Weapon Systems, or LAWS for short. But the key phrase here, the part that literally changes everything, is without human intervention. Think about that. An algorithm identifies a target, an algorithm selects it, and an algorithm kills it. The human, we're just out of the picture.
So you really have to understand the difference between what we've had for years and what's happening now. You've probably heard of remote-controlled drones, right? That's what we call a human-in-the-loop system. There's always a person, somewhere, making that final life-or-death call. But laws, that's a complete paradigm shift. We're moving to human out-of-the-loop, where that ultimate authority, the power to take a human life, is just handed over to a machine.
And look, don't for a second think this is some far-off, hypothetical future. It's not. The timeline here shows just how incredibly fast this is all moving. So you have March 2021, the first documented autonomous kill. Just 3 months later, the first time a coordinated drone swarm is used in actual combat. Fast forward to 2023, and suddenly the UN is passing its first ever resolution on this, with the Secretary General pushing for a new international treaty by 2026. I mean, this technology has gone from a wild idea to the battlefield in the blink of an eye.
And that speed brings us right to the heart of the matter, the core ethical problem. I mean, if we're actually building an algorithm for death, then we have to ask, what kind of mind is behind it?
And that really is the fundamental question, isn't it? Can a machine, just a piece of code, ever make a truly fair and ethical, a just decision about who lives and who dies?
Here's the thing you absolutely have to get about AI. Bias isn't some random glitch. It's not a bug. It's a direct reflection of the world we've given it to learn from. And let's be honest, our world is full of bias. The AI learns from historical data that's packed with our own societal stereotypes. It learns from media that might overrepresent certain groups as threats. It learns from data that's missing huge chunks of information about minorities. So this isn't a bug to be fixed. It's literally a feature of how these systems are built. Okay, let's play this out in a scenario that has experts genuinely terrified. Imagine an AI is trained on a ton of data that teaches it groups of young men with weapons equals enemy. Simple enough, right? But then you deploy this system, and it flies over a wedding where it's a local tradition for men to celebrate by firing guns into the air. The AI, it has no context. It has no cultural understanding. All it sees is what it was taught. Men, weapons, threat. It misclassifies these civilians as hostile targets, and the result is an unlawful, absolutely tragic attack.
So when that tragedy happens, who's to blame? This is where things get really murky. We fall into what legal experts are now calling the accountability void.
Human Rights Watch put it perfectly. They warned that these autonomous weapons could commit what any of us would clearly see as a war crime, but no one could actually be held responsible. Not the person who wrote the code, not the commander who deployed it, not a single soul. It's like we're deliberately programming a legal black hole into existence.
So let's just ask the question straight up. When a machine kills someone it shouldn't have, who is to blame? See, our whole legal system is based on human intent. But think about it. The programmer, they didn't intend for this specific tragedy to happen. They were just writing millions of lines of code. The commander, how can they be held responsible for a crime a robot can't even legally commit? And the manufacturer, they often get legal immunity. And the robot itself, well, it doesn't have a mind. It has no intent. It lacks what lawyers call mens rea, the guilty mind. You can't put an algorithm on trial. So you end up in this impossible situation. A war crime happens, but there's no criminal to prosecute.
Okay, so if this accountability gap is terrifying on a human level, just imagine the implications for global security. They're even worse. Let's talk about something called a flash war.
And to really wrap your head around this, we need to look back at something that already happened. Let's go to May 6th, 2010. This was the day of the famous flash crash, when the stock market basically broke.
What happened was, all these super fast trading algorithms started interacting, and they created this insane feedback loop that just spiraled completely out of control. Something like $1 trillion in market value just vanished in minutes. It happened way too fast for any human to stop. Now imagine that same dynamic, but instead of money, we're talking about weapons.
And that's the anatomy of a flash war. You have two rival AI systems on a battlefield. They detect each other, they start interacting, calculating responses in microseconds, way faster than us. Their core programming is simple: prioritize victory. And in that situation, the most rational move is almost always to escalate. Before a human operator can even process the first alert on their screen, the conflict could have already spun out into an unstoppable full-scale war. At that speed, meaningful human control isn't just difficult, it becomes a mathematical impossibility.
And this danger, this idea of a flash war, it's not just theory, it's very real, and it's driving a super urgent, high-stakes debate right now at the United Nations. And it's a debate that has basically split the world in two.
So if you look at the numbers, the vast majority of the world, we're talking over 100 nations, are pushing for a new treaty to either ban these things outright or at least regulate them very strictly. But, and this is a big but, a handful of major military powers, like the US and Russia, are actively blocking any progress. And that's created a really dangerous global stalemate.
So you basically got two competing visions for the future. On one side, you have the prohibitionists. Their argument is fundamentally moral. It's simple. Delegating life and death decisions to a machine is an ethical line that humanity should never, ever cross. On the other side, you have the regulators. These are mostly the big military powers, and they say, look, this technology is coming whether we like it or not, and if we ban it, we're just giving up a huge strategic advantage.
But you know, when you strip away all the technology, all the geopolitics, all the fancy jargon, you're left with a much simpler question. A question about us, about the human element.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres really put it in the starkest terms possible. He flat out called these weapons politically unacceptable and morally repugnant. And that's because this isn't just some technical debate about engineering. This is a debate about our most fundamental values as a species.
Right now, as we speak, the code for these weapons is being written. In labs, in military facilities all around the world, people are building these systems. So the final question is this. When future generations look back at what we did, when they look at that code, what will it say about us?